Roman, let's talk about the position group battles that are going to define this game. And the one that pops into my head first that I want your thoughts on is the one that defined last year's game. Oregon's defensive line against Washington offensive line. I know they're improved, and though I didn't think I'd be saying this, I think this Oregon defensive line is as good as last year. Maybe they're like a touch below, but the job that they have done of replenishing guys that went to the NFL draft and were taken all in the first 3 rounds last year is pretty darn impressive. Mateo Uyungale's in his 3rd year. Bear Alexander's been a beast. I'm chair of the Amari Washington fan club. If Washington's guards struggle, you're going to see number 52 just living in the backfield all day. And then you have Tatum Tuioti, who's looking like he's going to be an NFL guy as well. So I think last year's high-end talent was a little bit better than this group, but the depth of this group is better than last year. They were essentially rotating by the end of the year 3 interior defensive linemen. Oregon will play probably 4 or 5 interior guys, and you'll see a lot more players. Nasir Wyatt, the true freshman, it's gotten to be the point where he's got a name for the package when he's on the field. They call it 3rd and Nas, and he's just been incredible. He's generated 6 quarterback hurries in 23 snaps this year. So you get to 3rd and 8, number 32 is going on the field. So talk about how you feel in that matchup, because my confidence in Oregon's defensive line is incredibly high.
Yeah, my confidence in Washington's offensive line is much higher than it was last year. Let's say that. Because
aim low and achieve, Roman. Aim low and achieve.
Hey, we have a theme of that here on Locked On, especially when we get
Obviously
to the Big Ten squad, but we don't need to, go into some of those jokes because that would take up too much of your time in particular. It certainly would. No, when I look at the interior of Washington's offensive line, people are going to hate where this starts, but I think they're going to like where it finishes because I don't know what it's going to look like. I have no idea what the starting interior offensive line is going to look like for Washington this Saturday, but it's mainly due to the injury to right tackle Drew Party. If he plays, then Washington will have left guard John Mills, who has been another true freshman who's been tremendous on the interior this year. But if Azzopardi doesn't, then it'll be redshirt freshman Paki Finau, who I've also been incredibly impressed with. And you talk about being the chair of the Amari Washington fan club. I've been the chair of the Paki Finau fan club for a very long time as well. But I look at just what Washington can do along the interior of the offensive line. You're going to see a backup center either way because Landon Hatchett has a club on his right hand. Can't snap with that, so he's going to be on the sidelines. He'll be available.
You got 2 hands? What's the problem?
They tried that at Wisconsin. We all saw how that worked out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They tried it for a quarter. He snapped with his left hand. They were like, no.
Does he not play guard?
He used to play guard, but Washington at right guard, I'm glad you asked, is rotating his older brother, Gieran Hatchett, with true freshman Champ Talialia, who this coaching staff is absolutely enamored with. He's just a real big physical presence. He's listed at 6'5", 330 pounds. And for the last 2 weeks, now that he's able to redshirt, has been a much bigger part of the rotation. They're basically splitting snaps down the middle. And I like the physicality there because this is one of the things with Champ coming out of high school was he just needed to continue to improve in pass protection. He's a really, really strong run blocker. And I feel like the coaching staff wouldn't have him out there at this point if they didn't A, want to see what they had for next year, but B, legitimately trust him in some of these scenarios when it comes to pass blocking. Now, Purdue and UCLA, that's a nice, feeler for him, right? But this is a guy who, again, the physicality, the strength that he brings to the field, I feel very confident in, and this is just going to be his biggest matchup yet. And this is one of the biggest reasons that the coaching staff probably chose this plan and this trajectory for him was to just be able to throw him out there in this matchup, whether it be 50% of snaps or maybe even more, and just say, all right, you got to show us what you have because right now we are planning on giving you a much bigger role next season, most likely as a starter. So show us what you got.
All right, which position group battle do you want to highlight and ask me about?
Ooh, that's it. Let's talk about the wide receivers versus the secondary. So let's start with...
Which one?
You stepped on. I was about to get there.
Oh.
I was going to say, let's start with Oregon's receivers versus Washington's secondary.
Yeah, this is a question coming into the week, whether Gary Bryant will play, whether DeCorian Moore will play, who hasn't played since... Gosh, what would the last game have been before Iowa?
Because
yeah, maybe. It might have been because he got hurt the week before the week of practice against Iowa, which was after a bye. So yeah, they have been dinged up in a big way. You talk about Evan Stewart not having played a game this year. I don't expect him back this week. It's not technically impossible. There have been some rumblings, but I don't think he's actually going to play. DeCorian Moore, I don't know. I don't think so. Gary Bryant is the most likely guy to return, but what that leaves is redshirt freshman Jeremiah McClellan, who's stepped up in a big way, and then one-time Florida State, one-time Alabama, one-time junior college transfer, true college football journeyman Malik Benson, who had a punt return for a touchdown against USC and a 30-yard reception, followed by an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, shades of Trayshawn Holden, to which Dan Lanning was less than thrilled. And then he came back and made plays the rest of the day. And so I think what Oregon has come to realize with these receiver injuries is, yeah, guys have to step up, and they have. But the good side of it, the silver lining, is something that Oregon fans and myself were pointing out all year, which is, man, doesn't feel like you're targeting Kenyon Sadiq enough. And all of a sudden, when you have no Evan Stewart, no DeCorian Moore, no Gary Bryant, Jeremiah McClellan got hurt on the first play of the Iowa game, all of a sudden, who are you throwing the football to? It's number 18, who's going to be the first tight end taken in the 2026 NFL draft. And so he's led Oregon in receiving yards and has had 2 touchdowns in each of the last, pretty sure he had 2 against Minnesota, or maybe he just should have. I'd have to double check. But he's been on fire the last couple of games, and that's just a unique weapon who can line up at tight end, who can line up at H-back, who can line up in the backfield, who can line up at wide receiver, and he can be effective in any of those scenarios. And so, you know, if Washington fans want the best example, I think, of what he's capable of, his second touchdown, I mean, his first touchdown against USC was good. He just cooks a corner off the line, sprints across the field, and Dante makes a good throw in the red zone. But the second touchdown is the one that made Oregon fans go, oh my gosh, we got no hope of keeping this guy after this season, because he runs the seam route on 3rd and 2, and he catches it kind of over his head and pins it to his shoulder pad and gets sandwiched by 2 USC defenders and holds on to the ball. So, you know, the way that he has played the last couple weeks, I think creates a matchup nightmare for anyone, because that's what he is. And that, I think, is going to be a focal point again.
So I'm going to save my Kenyon Sadiq thoughts for a little bit later on, because we're going to talk about some individual matchups. So all our everydayers need to stick around for that. I have some very, very fun and very sometimes outlandish thoughts when I think about how Washington might want to defend Kenyon Sadiq. So that's why I wanted to start with the receiver group, because I can't say that I feel overly positive about DeCorian Moore playing in this game, Gary Bryant, just from, you know, some things that I've heard. And I'm curious to see what Washington is going to want to do, because I look at nickel cornerback Rashawn Clark, and I've been just thrilled with the performance he's put together over the last month or so.
How tall is he?
5'11", 6 foot.
Yeah, too small.
I'm not talking about Kenyon Sadiq in that.
Okay.
I'm just talking about, in terms of the overall matchups. But he's such a great athlete in space and in the nickel position. And with the way that Ryan Walters has changed his defense from being, hey, that guy's going to be isolated and man coverage a whole bunch of times, to, okay, now it's, a little bit more traditional. There's a lot more cover 3 involved, and just a lot more just different looks than what he is traditionally used to running. I think Rashawn Clark is one of those guys who, when you still get him into man coverage, has been really impressive in that regard. And speaking of man coverage, the guys on the outside, and Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock, who both are 6'4", but don't move like they're 6'4". They are so fluid for their size. I'm very intrigued at what that matchup is going to look like with Jeremiah McClellan, with Malik Benson, because on top of those guys, I look at Alex McLaughlin as safety, and he has been one of my
Great name.
Tremendous name, and even more tremendous when watching him on the field. He's been so productive this year. He's Washington's leading tackler. He has a pick 6 and a fumble recovery for a touchdown this season. So he's been really productive in that regard as well. And Ryan Walters loves to move him all around the formation, and that's one guy who I will always look at as an X factor in this defense. And I think one of the reasons that it's been so effective on the back end this year is because of his range and his ability to do so many different things and line up in so many different ways. And you don't necessarily always know what his assignment is going to be on any given play.
Let's dive further into the individual matchups that will define this one. We'll each have a couple, and we'll get to our score predictions, which Roman the Cowardly Lion won't make. So that is coming up next.
We'll see.